Hey, I'm Jonathan. Welcome to Rather Be Riffing. So what is the difference between maple fingerboards and rosewood fingerboards? Do they feel any different? Do they sound any different? And so to get to the bottom of that question, I'm going to be comparing the PRS SE Silver Sky Rosewood fingerboard version versus the PRS Silver Sky SE maple board version. And so in this video, I'll do several sound comparisons between the two guitars, as well as offer my observations around some of the differences when it comes to tone and feel. I've also received questions from some of you as to whether the neck profiles are the same or different, so I'll dive into that question as well. And at the end of the video, I'll do an A-B comparison of both guitars in the context of the intro music. So let's check out that intro track again, but swapping the roles of the guitars around. I'll be using the maple board version for the rhythm and the rosewood board version for the lead. So up first, I'm going to plug straight into the amps, clean, with no pedals, and toggle through all 5 pickup positions to check out the total ranges of both of these guitars. And so listen out for the dynamic range and sustain of these guitars and let me know what you think. And so in my dedicated review videos of each of these guitars, I've talked about how much I love the voicing of these pickups. I think all 5 positions represent those quintessential Strat tones, and I found that to be very consistent across the maple board version and rosewood fingerboard version. But let me know if you're picking up on any tonal differences so far. So up next, let's kick on a little bit of light overdrive. I'm going to be using my Vemram Janray. I'm going to switch to the middle position. I'm a big fan of the middle position on these guitars. I find it has a percussiveness and a directness that suits certain parts perfectly. So let's check that out. So I'm starting to hear some subtle differences between the maple board and rosewood board versions here. I'm finding that the attack on the Rosewood fingerboard version is a little bit squishier and a little bit more compressed, whereas the attack on the maple fingerboard version is a little bolder and has a little bit more headroom. And I'm also finding that the maple board version is sounding a touch brighter and a little more focused, whereas the Rosewood fingerboard version is a little warmer and broader sounding to me. So as for the neck profiles on these two guitars, many of you have asked me if there's any differences and if I could speak to that. So the neck shapes are very similar between the two guitars. The maple board version, the neck profile feels a touch deeper, while the Rosewood fingerboard version feels a little less deep, and I perceive it to feel a little bit wider. Now, I don't believe the neck is actually any wider. I believe they both have the same nut width. However, I think there's a little less shoulder on the Rosewood fingerboard version, which then I perceive it as feeling a little bit wider than the maple board version. For me, I bonded a little bit more with the neck profile on the maple board version, but that is personal preference and highly subjective. I would also caution here that these differences are very subtle, and I'm not so sure if those are actual differences in carves or just natural variances in the manufacturing process. So I'd highly suggest, if you can, to go try some of these guitars and see which one is right for you. So up next, let's check out position 4. So up next, I'm gonna go to the neck position. I'm gonna kick on my tube screamer and go for some more bluesy parts. Let's see what differences we can hear in this context. Again, very subtle differences in my mind. I did, however, tend to prefer the Rosewood fingerboard version ever so slightly in this scenario. I don't know if that's as much to do with the tone as it is to do with the feel. I do find that with the Rosewood fingerboard, the wood is more oily, whereas the maple board is more dry. And I do think that affects the playing experience. Those type of parts felt a little bit more fluid to me on the Rosewood fingerboard when it comes to performing. And I also have a strong association, for whatever reason, when it comes to Rosewood fingerboards. I associate them more to the blues. I don't know if that's my Stevie Ray Vaughan roots, but yeah, I'd love to know what you were picking up on there. So let's go to the bridge position next. I'm gonna play some rock rhythm tones with a bit of a heavier gain sound. I'm going to stack a Noble's ODR1 with a Vemoram Shanks 4K. Let's check that out. I really think either guitar could work in that scenario. However, I did have a slight preference for the maple board version. I found it had a little bit more definition and a touch more snap than the Rosewood board version in that context. Let me know if you had a preference and why. Let's go to that quintessential position 2 Strat quack. Here I'm going to be using some light gain with my Vemoram Janray. I'm going to play one of my original pieces of music here that I think really demonstrates the nuances of position 2. There's a lot of hybrid picking using both my fingers and a pick, as well as some hybrid melody and rhythm playing. So let's check that out. So now it's time to compare both guitars in the context of a mix. I'll do a direct head-to-head A/B comparison using the intro music. So let's check that out. So I like to share some of my personal observations around tonal differences and playability differences between these two guitars. I feel like the tonal differences really followed the conventional wisdom here. I found the Rosewood fingerboard to sound a little warmer and a little broader sounding, whereas the maple fingerboard sounded a bit brighter, had a little more attack and snap. I find the maple fingerboard, for me, in the music that I like, really works well for lead tones, as well as some of the compositions that I make where I'm doing a lot of hybrid rhythm and melody playing. And the Rosewood fingerboard I really favored more in a blues context, where the feel of the Rosewood fingerboard being a bit more oily and less dry compared to the maple fingerboard really lends itself well to that playing style where it feels a little bit more fluid, a little bit more fun to play. So I'd love to know what differences you were hearing between the two guitars. Did you prefer the Rosewood fingerboard version or the maple fingerboard version, and why? So I really hope you found this comparison helpful. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, commenting, and/or subscribing. That would really help me get the content out to others that may find it useful as well. In the meantime, take care, and I will see you in the next video.